Two tails, one head, yin yang. Hope everyone is well. Two heads, one tail, yang yin. Two tails, one head, yin yang. This is the trigram, leave, fire, or light. Three tails, old yin. Two tails, one head, Yang Yang. Two tails, one head, Yang Yang. The bottom trigram will be read as solid, broken, solid, which is Li, fire, and light. Li is fire and light, both inner and outer. As in inner light, she is consciousness at its most lucid and unclouded, holding things together in the mind, perceiving their differences and connections, and discerning the underlying patterns of relationship. And as well as vision, Li is the light that makes things visible, the power to cast light on things, spreading clarity and the awareness of order. Li is the middle daughter, living in the south, the region of midsummer and the burning sun. The top or outer trigram of our primary hexagram will be read as broken, solid, solid. This is Xun, wind or wood. Xun is both wind and living plants. Whatever penetrates, spreads, and grows, shaping itself to the space available or shaping that space to its own nature. She is responsive flexibility, sensitively improvising and adapting. Like the wind, she can always find a way through because she never creates any resistance. And so her influence is subtle and gradual, but far-reaching. In the family of trigrams, Xun is the eldest daughter, gentle and submissive. She belongs to the southeast and to late spring and early summer. Xun, wind or wood, above Li, fire and light, give us the primary hexagram of 37. Once our fourth line transforms from an old yin to a young yang, the top or outer trigram of our supporting hexagram will be solid, 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 which is Qian, heaven. Qian is superhuman cosmic law. Enduring, he determines the nature and development of all things, from the movement of the stars to the cycle of the seasons, to causing each individual seed to grow into its own kind of plant. Heaven is creativity in its pure form, the force that drives change and what endures within it. He confronts us with truth in what it demands, both as the absolute law of nature and as the challenge of individual calling experienced as an inner law. He is both the awareness of what to do and how to be, and also the power to act on it. Heaven is Father, found in the northwest, the realm between autumn and winter, when the buds set and seeds fall to earth. Qian, heaven, above Li, fire and light, give us the supporting hexagram of 13. We'll get the titles to our hexagrams from I-ming's Taoist I Ching, which he wrote in 1796 as a Taoist adept. It's quite alchemical in nature. 37, I-ming calls people in the home, governing the inner, refining the self, mastering the mind, turning the attention inward. And supporting hexagram 13, which puts our primary hexagram in a broader context and influence, the direction of travel, an underlying issue that has to do with you and your relationship to it all. Sameness with people, mixing in with the ordinary world, concealing illumination, assimilating to others. Right off the bat, we will look at this Tarot I Ching, or I Ching Tarot by Kibi, K-I-B-I. See the cool images that she associates with these hexagrams. 37 people in the home. Looks like good connection. Interesting. And in the little booklet, what is said about 37? Good connection. Mind harmony, view of husband and wife. There is fire, knowledge in the house. Wind, virtue, is born. Also, because there is wind, it is a good relationship to partner that allows the fire to continue burning. And our supporting hexagram, which puts our primary hexagram in a broader context, influence, direction of travel, underlying issue that has to do with you and your relationship to it all. 13, sameness with people. Looks like this. Fellowship. Queon Heaven is supporting, well, it's reaching a hand down to Lee, Fire, and Light. They got the tattoos on the wrist of the trigrams. That's super cool. Fellowship. 13. Fellowship says, seeks knowledge, comrades, intellectual activity. Before the sun is high in the sky, it looks for wisdom and wise men who are clearly strong. In the case of the top line, is their search in uninhabited land. Thank you, Kibi. Next, we will look at Hilary Barrett's I Ching, Walking Your Path, Creating Your Future, which is a nice introductory I Ching commentary, but also quite profound with really cool key questions at the beginning of each hexagram. 37, Hilary Barrett calls people in the home. Key questions. When we approach the I Ching to consult the oracle, the question we bring to it will always have the general context of how can I act, in creative relation with the spirits or forces shaping this moment of time. Where are the boundaries of the home you inhabit? How are you building inner and outer relationships into a home? What kinds of growth does this environment support? Oracle. People in the home. A woman's constancy is fruitful. The old Chinese character for home shows a pig under a roof. A home is where people rear a pig together, sharing wealth, work, and value. People in the home cooperate in their shared space and invest in it together, as in a family, workplace, school of thought, or culture. And within the structure it provides, they can recognize and understand what is valuable. To create a successful home, you need to have the constancy of a woman. Steadily, over time, your work creates a space in which all can grow freely into their natural form and find their place and their connections with others. You allow space for new things to enter and grow, becoming part of the whole inner ecosystem. You keep the space for living in. Cool picture there. Image. Wind comes forth originally from fire. People in the home. A noble one's words have substance and her actions are consistent. A strong fire in the hearth will create its own drought. The light and warmth at the center of the home translating into far-reaching influence in the world. It represents a constant, living awareness that pervades the structure and makes its presence felt in everything the noble one says and does. Also, the fire needs a free flow of air to burn cleanly and steadily. Real words and consistent actions keep it alight. Sequence. People in the home follows from hexagram 36, brightness hidden. Injury on the outside naturally means turning back towards the home, and so people in the home follows. The home is a refuge. Inner light that had to be hidden away from the outside world is secure here and finds its expression. When you are unappreciated or unseen, you turn back and connect with like-minded people. Pair. People in the home forms a pair with hexagram 38, opposing. Opposing means outside, people in the home means inside. These two hexagrams describe a single landscape. Every inside must have its outside. Inside, you find your fellows, those who share your vision. Outside are the foreigners who see differently and do not belong in this home. And our supporting hexagram, which puts our primary hexagram in a broader context and influence, a direction of travel, an underlying issue that has to do with you and your relationship to it all. 13, Hilary Barrett calls people in harmony. Key questions. What are the unique contributions? Where is the common ground? How will your life change if your group expands? Oracle. People in harmony in the wilds, creating success. Fruitful to cross the great river. A noble one's constancy bears fruit. People create harmony with one another where they are of like mind and find common cause. They come out from the walls of their villages to forge alliances in the wild country. That is, they seek out common ground where they can meet beyond the familiar boundaries that usually define the limits of people like us. This means radically expanding the whole idea of who we are. Such fellowship is usually created between people, but it can also take place within an individual. For instance, between inner selves or between apparently unrelated traditions and ways of knowing. There is harmony when these are brought together in inner conversation to create strong alliances. There is strength and energy in alliance. People in harmony can commit themselves further, take greater risks. They can cross the river and enter new territories. Once there is agreement, it's worthwhile to follow the vision tenaciously with the constancy of a noble one. That one guy's looking at you over his shoulder. Is he the noble one? Maybe they're both noble ones. Image. Heaven joins with fire, people in harmony. A noble one sorts the clans and differentiates between beings. Imagine the fire reaching up towards the night sky, joining with the stars to cast light on the many clans gathered around it. A noble one has the clarity of vision to see the shared nature all the groups have in common, and also what is shared only within each individual group. And how this distinctiveness comes from their clannish roots. Harmony between people will not come about by forcibly amalgamating the clans. To disarm their natural defensiveness, the noble one needs first to recognize and respect identities different from his own. Sequence. People in harmony follows from hexagram 12, blocked. Things cannot end with blockage, and so people in harmony follows. The exclusive, divisive mindset of us versus them must be replaced by a larger sense of fellowship. Human awareness lights up the world, perceiving and creating the possibilities for co-creation and overcoming the drift apart of hexagram 12. People in harmony forms a pair with hexagram 14, great possession. Great possession means crowds. People in harmony means connecting. There is power in groups and alliances, but the emphasis for now is on the human experience of harmony and connection rather than on what might emerge. And we will look at our changing line 4, which puts a pin in the map to say you are here, or at least here some places you may find yourself. It takes precedence over all other elements and is the most focused part of the reading. And the general context of changing line 4 is the capacity for action, asking how the work can be done. So hexagram 37, people in the home, changing line 4. Enriching the home, great good fortune. Riches are stored up in the home. It is good to invest more there. What enriches the home? Harmony, sound friendship, and a wealth of exchange between people. Next, we will look at I-ming's take on all of this. He wrote the Taoist I Ching in 1796 as a Taoist adept. Hexagram 37, people in the home, and it is a very alchemical commentary. For people in the home, it is beneficial that the women be chaste. Explanation. People in the home means there are people in the home. This is the path of governing the inner. As for the qualities of the hexagram, above is wind, entering, and below is fire, luminous. When illumined, one can follow the Tao, and by following it, one can gradually develop the illumination. Receptivity and understanding are necessary to each other, like wind blowing fire so that fire grows with the wind. Here is a way to govern the home, so it is called people in the home. This hexagram represents refining the self, mastering the mind, turning the attention around to gaze inward. It follows on the previous hexagram, advance. In advance, illumination grows from receptivity. It is the work of advancing the fire and employing illumination. To advance the fire and employ illumination, it is necessary to first illumine the inner. Illumination of the inner is refining the self. Refining the self simply means refining the yin within oneself. What yin is this? It is the human mentality. In the human body, the vitality, spirit, soul, psyche, and intent all belong to yin and all take orders from the human mentality. When the human mind is calm, they are all calm. And when the human mind is agitated, they all are agitated. Refining the self simply means refining away this human mind. When you refine away the human mind, the mind of Tao spontaneously becomes manifest. When the mind of Tao becomes manifest, the mind is illumined. Then the vitality, spirit, soul, psyche, and intent all transform into guardian spirits of truth. The human body is like a home. The human vitality, spirit, soul, psyche, and intent are like the people in a home. When you refine the human mind and produce the mind of Tao, the vitality, spirit, soul, psyche, and intent each rests in its own position, and each discharges its own affairs. Joy, anger, sadness, and happiness are all harmonious and balanced, like a family being orderly. This is represented as the benefit in women being chaste. Women consider preservation of chastity valuable. Refining the self is like a woman preserving her chastity and not getting engaged. Then the true yin within oneself will become manifest. When the true yin is manifest, the open awareness of the mind is unobscured, and outside things cannot get in. Thereby one can gradually progress in an orderly manner to seek the yang of the other to the benefit of all. In the body of the hexagram, the second line is empty, below, while the fifth is solid, above. When one empties the mind, one can thereby fill the belly. The benefit for female chastity is precisely that whereby one affects emptiness and preserves calm, as a strategy to establish the home and business. Therefore, practitioners of the Tao are cautious and wary, and do not let any yin energy reside in the heart, even subconsciously. In the first hexagram, I-ming talked about turning the light around, which had to do with looking inward, and I think there was a visualization they had about doing that. And the emptying the mind and filling the belly is emptying the upper dantian and filling the lower dantian. Upper dantian is like the third eye chakra area. Lower dantian is kind of in the sacral area, possibly between the sacral and the root. Next, we will read our changing line 4, which puts a pin in the map to say you are here, or here are some places you may find yourself, takes precedence over all other elements, and is the most focused part of the reading. Changing line 4 has the general context of the capacity for action, asking how the work can be done. So 37. People in the home. Changing line 4. A rich home is very fortunate. Explanation. With flexibility seeking firmness, using firmness to balance flexibility, neither clinging nor rejecting, gradually introducing guidance. By emptying the mind, one can fill the belly. Wealth is renewed daily, and one accumulates spiritual riches and celestial treasure. That great fortune does not stop at selflessness. This is flexibility using firmness in refining the self. We'll also look at the commentary section for each of our hexagrams. 37. Members of a family. Wind above, fire below. Wind emerges from fire, members of a family. Thus there is factuality in the speech of superior people, consistency in their deeds. Members of a family means the people of one family. Above is wind, below is fire. So fire is inside and wind is outside. Wind emerges from fire. When fire burns, wind spontaneously arises. Wind and fire are of the same family. This is the image of members of a family. What superior people see in this is that just as wind and fire are in the same place, wind rising from fire, Similarly, others and oneself live together, and so what one can do for others is based on oneself. If one is upright oneself, others will naturally be influenced. Therefore, when superior people speak, they do not speak in vain. There must be something factual for them to speak about. When they act, they do not do so at random. There must be something consistent about their deeds. When one is careful about one's words and prudent in one's acts, those with whom one lives will also be factual in speech and consistent in deeds, and be members of a family with oneself. Members of a family does not only mean people of the same house, it means all those among whom one lives and with whom one works. When there is factuality in speech, words being based on actualities, then there is a point, there is evidence, that speech will accord with reason. When there is consistency in deeds, action having a conclusion, then there is true practice and genuine application. Those deeds will accomplish something. When one speaks factually and acts consistently, without flaw in word or deed, inwardly not losing oneself, outwardly not hurting others, then those with whom one lives and works will be influenced without anything being said, just as wind spontaneously rises when fire burns. Words are the voice of the mind. Deeds are the tune of the body. If practitioners of the Tao speak with factuality and act with consistency, then the mind will be upright and the body will be disciplined. Nature and life will have a dwelling place. Furthermore, they will be in confluence with heaven above and earth below, and will be members of a family with heaven and earth. And our supporting hexagram 13, which puts our primary hexagram in a broader context and influence, a direction of travel, an underlying issue that has to do with you and your relationship to it all. Sameness with others. Heaven above, fire below. Heaven with fire, sameness with others. Thus do superior people distinguish things in terms of categories and groups. Sameness with others means being the same as other people. Above is heaven, below is fire. Fire is the sun. The sky covers everything. The sun shines on everything. The sky and the sun are in the same place, impartial and illuminating. This is the image of sameness with others. What superior people see in this is that when practitioners of the Tao deal with people, it is important to be able to be the same as others, yet it is most important not to assimilate to them arbitrarily. So they distinguish them in terms of categories and groups. Categories and groups are internally similar and united, like different classes of people, each having their own groups. Superior people see each group as a category in which all members are the same. Distinguishing means differentiating. Things are things that are right or wrong, good or bad. Superior people must distinguish things. They dare not arbitrarily consider all categories and groups the same. This is how they model themselves on the impartiality of heaven and distinguish things in emulation of the illumination of the sun. When one is impartial and also lucidly aware, there is no one in the world one cannot be the same as, and there is nothing in the world that is arbitrarily considered the same as something different. This is because superior people assimilate by means of the Tao, not in terms of mentality. They assimilate by means of reason, not in terms of personality. This is what is called harmonizing without being influenced, associating without becoming a partisan. This is how the sky and sun are the same toward things, and this is how superior people are the same with others. Next, we will look at James Dekorne's Gnostic Book of Changes, which I've left a link to in the description box below. He is a practitioner of the Tao himself and leaves helpful quotes like from the Kabbalah or Carl Jung, for instance. At the end, he sums up each of the hexagrams, but through the body of it are a bunch of synthesized excerpts from several different I Ching commentaries. 37, the family, is what he calls that hexagram. Other titles might be family life, clan, home, linkage, dwelling people, the psyche. A quote from D.F. Hook, may indicate a situation where the family can and should help. Judgment, leg. For the regulation of the family, what is most advantageous is that the wife be firm and correct. Ritsumo/Karcher, dwelling people, harvesting, woman, trial. This hexagram describes your situation in terms of living and working with others in a common space. It emphasizes that caring for your relation with those who share this space and for the space itself is the adequate way to handle it. To be in accord with the time, you are told to dwell with people. Wu, the family indicates that it is advantageous for the woman to be persevering. This is a hexagram with its emphasis on women. Both constituent trigrams are feminine. Hence, those who endeavor to be firm and correct will have advantages. And I do want to read Cleary 1, which is from the Taoist I Ching, but it's really... So, in other words, we already read it in the Taoist I Ching section, but this is good. For people in the home, it is beneficial that the woman be chaste. In the human body, the vitality, spirit, soul, psyche, and intent all belong to yin and all take orders from the human mentality. When you refine away the human mind, the mind of Tao spontaneously becomes manifest. The image. Leg, wind rising out of fire, the image of the family. The superior man speaks the truth and is consistent in his behavior. Wilhelm/Bain's wind comes forth from fire, the image of the family. Thus the superior man has substance in his words and duration in his way of life. Blowfold, this hexagram symbolizes wind rising from fire. The superior man's speech is full of substance and he behaves with constancy. Lu, the wind coming out of the fire symbolizes the family. The speech of the superior man should have substance and his conduct be enduring. Ritsumo/Karcher, wind originating from fire issuing forth, dwelling people. A Chunsu or chief son or superior person or sage uses words to possess beings and also movement to possess perseverance. Cleary 1, wind emerges from fire, members of a family. Thus is there factuality in the speech of superior people, consistency in their deeds. Wu, wind comes forth from fire, this is the family. Thus the Chun-Si or chief son or superior person speaks with facts and acts with perseverance. Commentary. Confucius/Leg, in family, the wife is in her correct place in the lower trigram and the husband in his correct place in the upper. That spouses occupy their correct positions shows the correct relationship between heaven and earth. The parents rule the family. Let the father indeed be father, and the son, son. Let the elder brother be indeed elder brother, and the younger brother, younger. Let the husband indeed be husband, and the wife, wife. Then the family will be in its correct state. Bring the family to that state, and all under heaven will be established. Leg, the written Chinese character for family simply means a household, or the members of a family. Each line is a member of the family. Each trigram is, rather. So what they're describing is the correct orientation in I Ching terms of how the ideal arrangement might be and how the interconnectedness between each of the lines is balanced out. Leg, the written Chinese character for family simply means a household or the members of the family. The lesson of the hexagram is the regulation of the family, affected by the cooperation of the husband and wife in their several spheres, and only needing it to become universal to secure the good order of the kingdom. The important place accorded to the wife is seen in the short sentence in the judgment, that she be firm and correct and do her part well is essential for the family's proper regulation. The wife is represented by line 2, and the husband is her proper correlate in line 5. The relationship between heaven and earth is analogous to the relationship between husband and wife. The second sentence of the Confucian commentary, more closely rendered, would be, that in the family there is an authoritative ruler is a way of naming father and mother. This means that assertion of authority in a family should be a correct balance of force and gentleness. Anthony. The family symbolizes correct relationships between people. The family unit, the spiritual family, the sage and the student, and human groups generally. When these most basic relationships are correct, the world is made correct through the force of inner truth, through cultivation of the feminine component of our nature, and through persevering in a virtually menial position from our ego's viewpoint, so that our work can come to fruition. All this means to forego striving and self-assertion and to allow ourselves to be led, while persevering in gentleness and devotion to our path. Notes and paraphrases, judgment. For the correct regulation of the psyche, what is most important is that the ego must be firm and correct. The superior man lives his allegiance to the ideals of the work. Applying the Hermetic axiom, as above, so below, the relationships within a family are analogous to the relationships within a city-state or a kingdom, and vice versa. A quote from Confucius by D.H. Smith. Society centuries before the time of Confucius had been organized on the basis of family. In the early days of the Zhou dynasty, fiefs had been allotted to the feudal lords in a system of planned colonization. These feudal lords, linked to one another and to the royal house by marriage ties, took their families, retainers, peasants, artisans, and soldiers to form self-sufficient colonies based on an agricultural economy and governed from well-fortified walled cities. These large family groupings of the nobility were preserved only so long as the relationships of parents to children, brothers to brothers, and masters to servants were effectively controlled. If the ideal city is like a family, then the analogy also holds for an individual. Here the comparison goes directly from city to psyche. A quote from Plato in the Republic. Have we any greater evil for a city than what splits it and makes it many instead of one? Or a greater good than what binds it together and makes it one? Then is that city best governed which is most like a single human being? Psychologically interpreted, the hexagram of the family symbolizes the psyche, and the Confucian commentary tells us that when its inner components all assume their proper roles and functions, then the work will come into fruition. All under heaven will be established. The identical idea has been stated in Gnostic thought. A quote from the Gnostic Gospel according to Thomas. Jesus said to them, when you make eyes in the place of an eye, and a hand in the place of a hand, and a foot in the place of a foot, and an image in the place of an image, then shall you enter the kingdom. The husband is the analog of heaven or the self, and the wife is the analog of earth or the ego. When the ego assumes its correct role as the magnetic servant of the work, then inner transformations can take place. I have paraphrased the judgment in terms of the necessity of the ego to follow the dictates of the work, but one could alternately phrase it in terms of keeping emotional responses under control. For the wife to be firm and correct is to ensure that emotions, drives, and appetites are not allowed to make decisions. They are servants, not masters. This is the essence of the work, and arguably the most reiterated idea in the I-ming. A quote from R. Asiagoli in Psychosynthesis. The patient should be encouraged to use his mind through observation and discrimination to bring clearly into his awareness the irrational aspect of his drives and emotions, and also the possible drawbacks and harmfulness to himself and others of their uncontrolled manifestation. To act on the spur of an impulse, a drive, or an intense emotion can very often produce undesirable effects which one afterwards regrets. Therefore, he should learn, by repeated experiment and effort, to insert between impulse and action a stage of reflection, of mental consideration of a situation, and of critical analysis of his impulse, trying to realize its origin, its source. The 37th hexagram teaches us that the way to manage the emotions is no different than the proper management of a family. No wise parent can teach a child self-discipline by adopting the child's point of view. Permissiveness, either with our children or our own primitive drives and passions, is a sure formula for disintegration. The work demands that the ego hold the line on this issue. Indeed, it is the ego's only legitimate function. A quote from R. Asiagoli in Psychosynthesis: "We are dominated by everything with which our ego becomes identified. We can dominate and control everything from which we disidentify ourselves." And our supporting hexagram, which puts our primary hexagram in a broader context and influence, a direction of travel, an underlying issue that has to do with you and your relationship to it all. 13, James Dekorne calls Union of Forces. Other titles might be Fellowship with Men, the symbol of companionship, lovers, beloved friends, like-minded persons, concording people, gathering men, sameness with people, universal brotherhood, fellowship, community, united, human association, union of men, integration of forces, minor synthesis, cliques, concordance, to be in accord with, and confirmation. Judgment leg. Union of forces appears in the remote districts of the country, indicating progress and success. It will be advantageous to cross the great stream. It will be advantageous to maintain the firm correctness of the superior man. Wilhelm/Bain's Fellowship with Men in the Open, success. It furthers one to cross the great water. The perseverance of the superior man furthers. Blofeld, lovers, friends in the open, success. It is advantageous to cross the great river or sea, to make any kind of journey. The superior man will benefit if he does not slacken his righteous persistence. Lu, Fellowship of Men in the Open Countryside, success. It benefits one to cross the great water. It benefits the superior man to continue his task. Ritzema/Karcher, concording people, tending towards the countryside, growing, harvesting, wading the great river, harvesting, Chansu or chief son or superior person, trial. This hexagram describes your situation in terms of sharing a goal with others. It emphasizes that finding ways to cooperate with and harmonize people's efforts is the adequate way to handle it. Slofnacy, gathering men in the wilds, receipt, beneficial to ford the great river, beneficial for the gentleman to determine. Clary 1, sameness with people in the wilderness is developmental. It is beneficial to cross great rivers. It is beneficial for a superior person to be upright. Wu, fellowship in the open is pervasive, etc. It will be advantageous to the Chunsi or chief son or superior person who perseveres. The image, leg. The images of heaven and fire form a union of forces. The superior man, in accordance with this, distinguishes things according to their kinds and classes. Wilhelm/Bain's heaven together with fire, the image of fellowship with men. Thus the superior man organizes the clans and makes distinctions between things. Blofeld, this hexagram symbolizes heaven, the sun, and fire representing a pair of lovers. The superior man treats everything in a manner proper to his kind. An analogy based on the component trigrams between the sun and fire, which to some extent are of a kind. Lu, fire goes up to heaven, symbolizing fellowship with men. The superior man organizes his kinship group or party and sorts them out. Cleary 2, leaders distinguish beings in terms of classes and families. Commentary, Confucius/Leg, in union of forces, the magnetic line has the central place of influence and responds to her correlate line in the upper trigram of strength. The hexagram takes its name from the upper trigram of strength, lending its power to the lower trigram of clarity and intelligence. This represents the correct course of the superior man. It is only the superior man who can comprehend and affect the minds of all under the sky. Leg. Union of forces describes a condition which is the opposite of the preceding hexagram of divorcement. What was there distress and obstruction is here a union of forces, but it must be based entirely on the good of the whole, without any taint of selfishness. The dynamic line, correctly in the fifth place, occupies the most important position and has for his correlate the magnetic second line, also in her correct place. The one female line is naturally sought after by all the male lines. The editors of the Konghasi edition would make the second line respond to all of the lines of the upper trigram as being more agreeable to the idea of union. The upper trigram is that of heaven, the lower is of fire, whose tendency is to mount upwards. This image suggests the fire ascending, blazing to the sky and uniting with it. All these ideas are in harmony with the notion of union, but it must be free of all factionalism, and this is indicated by its being in the remote districts of the country, where people are unsophisticated and free from the corrupting effects of urban intrigue. Although a union from such motives can cope with the greatest difficulties, yet a word of caution is added. Notes and paraphrases. Judgment. Connections are being made. If you are able to maintain your will, it is advisable to push for a synthesis. The superior man differentiates and prioritizes. He sorts and evaluates his options. This is another image of union, not the supreme union of hexagram number 11, harmony, but a subordinate union of forces within the psyche which builds towards an eventual grand alliance. The component trigrams show the union of strength and clarity, suggesting that a certain level of mental comprehension is involved. To receive the hexagram without changing lines is often a confirmation of your particular thought, saying in effect, you've made the connection. Comprehension, synthesis, involves making distinctions, analysis, a paradoxical process in which one must divide before one can reunite. This is the solve et coagula of alchemy. Thus we see the superior man in the image creating categories to bring about union. This is discrimination directed toward reclassification or rectification. For example, a heterogeneous mixture of vegetable and flower seeds is made meaningful when one sorts them into their separate categories. The disparate elements then become coherently united. In I Ching terms, each line obtains its proper correlate, as in hexagram number 63. That is called completion. A quote from Plotinus in the Enneads. Dialectic alternates between synthesis and analysis until it has gone through the entire domain of the intelligible and has arrived at the principle. Stopping there, for it is only there that it can stop, no longer busying itself with a multitude of objects, since it has arrived at unity, it contemplates. The Chinese name of this hexagram includes the word Zhen, which is apparently a difficult concept, since many philosophers have spent a good deal of energy in trying to define it. A quote from Wing Tsit-chan in A Source Book in Chinese Philosophy. Zhen has been variously translated as benevolence, perfect virtue, goodness, human-heartedness, love, altruism, etc. None of these expresses all the meanings of the term. It means a particular virtue, benevolence, and also the general virtue, the basis of all goodness. Neo-Confucianists interpreted it as impartiality, the character of production and reproduction, consciousness, seeds that generate, the will to grow, one who forms one body with heaven and earth, or the character of love and the principle of mind. In modern times, it has even been equated with ether and electricity. Chu Hsi defines Zhen as the character of the mind, psyche, and the principle of love, union. Interpreted in this way, we are enabled to apprehend the essence of the word love, which is union, becoming one with its object. I have chosen the title of Union of Forces to emphasize intrapsychic dynamics which are not immediately obvious in Wilhelm's title of Fellowship with Men. For example, in dealing with questions pertaining to the work, the concept of ego states or subpersonalities is often relevant to the symbolism of this hexagram. A quote from J.G. Watkins in The Therapeutic Self. The human self has been described here as composed of different ego states separated by boundaries. It has been likened to the structure of political principalities. From clinical observation, we find that ego states can cooperate for mutual well-being, like allied nations against a common enemy. An ego state may become split, like East and West Germany, or fracture into many segments, like the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Ego states may become cognitively dissonant and hostile to each other, like Syria and Israel. In fact, the behavior of ego states within an individual is not unlike that between individuals, and between those groups of individuals called countries. Why should the behavior of human stuff not be substantially similar at all levels of its organizations? The evidence of self-division into ego states is significant, and an equally tenable hypothesis might be that the states and boundaries of political entities have been imposed by men on each other because these represent an externalization of the internal divisions in their own selves. Say that 5 times fast. This hexagram's shadow side reveals circumstances preventing the union of entities or forces, more than those conditions promoting fruitful affiliation. Note that only the 1st and 5th lines of the figure depict a positive synthesis. The first one is minor, and in the case of line 5, union is attained only after much struggle. Line 2 reveals a clique or faction situation opposed to the general welfare, and lines 3 and 4 are images of recalcitrant forces unable to either join or attack the alliance. The 6th line depicts a partial union, probably the most common outcome in general experience, which the Confucian commentary nevertheless minimizes. Out of 6 lines then, only 2 describe anything like complete fellowship. I've received this hexagram without changing lines when the context of the question revealed an incestuous clique-type situation. So not all fellowship or union of forces is necessarily an ideal configuration. Next, we will look at our changing line 4, which puts a pin in the map to say you are here, or at least here some places you may find yourself, takes precedence over all other elements, and is the most focused part of the reading. Changing line 4 has the general context, the capacity for action, asking how the work can be done. So turning back to hexagram 37, the family, changing line 4. Leg. The 4th line, magnetic, shows its subject enriching the family. There will be great good fortune. Wilhelm/Baines, she is the treasure of the house. Great good fortune. Blowfold, a well-to-do household. Great good fortune. Lou, one makes the family prosperous. Great good fortune. Ritzelmilk/Karcher, affluence dwelling. The great significant. Slofnacy, a wealthy family. Greatly auspicious. Clary 1, a rich home is very fortunate. Wu, this is a wealthy family with great auspiciousness. Commentary. Confucius/Leg, this is due to her docility and because she is in her correct place. Wilhelm/Baines, for she is devoted and in her place. Blowfold, this is good fortune is indicated by the position of the line which symbolizes cheerful acceptance. Ritzelmilk/Karcher, yielding located in the situation indeed. Clary 2, docilely occupying its position. Wu, because its position is well taken. Leg. Line 4 is magnetic and in her proper place. The wife is again suggested to us, and despite her confinement to the internal affairs of the household, she can do much to enrich the family. Yu Yan, Yaon Dynasty, observes that the riches of a family are not to be sought in its wealth, but in the affection and harmony of its members. Where these prevail, the family is not likely to be poor, and whatever it has will be well preserved. Notes and paraphrases Sue. The woman of the family balances the income and expenditures, enriching the well-being and peace of the family. The faithful steward performs the same service for public welfare. Wing. Attention to details pertaining to the economy of the situation brings good fortune. Any attempts to further the well-being of others in a modest and humble way will be successful. Editor. This line restates the message of the judgment. Psychologically speaking, it reaffirms the idea that emotional energy under control and in its proper place is a great source of personal power. This is an image of the ideal role of the ego in relation to the work. A quote from Uriah Kaplan in Jewish Meditation. Control of the emotions is a very important element of self-control in general. Often the concept of self-control conjures up the image of an emotionless, dry, rigid way of life. If a person is in complete control of his emotions, however, he can call forth any emotion he desires and is free to enhance it as he wills. Rather than being controlled by emotions such as love, yearning, or awe, he can control them. One can evoke these emotions and blend them together, painting every aspect of life with a rich palette of feelings. Control of the emotions can thus lead a person to experience a richer blend of feelings in his daily life than the average person generally experiences. Makes me think of not over-identifying with any emotion that you have or any inner state. I think I've heard people talk about it in terms of teaching a child not necessarily to say I am angry, but that I have anger, which is a completely different thing. I am angry indicates identification with anger, but I have anger has to do with noticing that it is an inner state that doesn't completely control somebody, but is something that you notice as like an observer. James Dekorne breaks changing line 4 down into 2 possible succinct definitions, A and B. Our emotions must serve us, not rule us. And B, the whole is enriched by the rectitude of one of its parts. Next, we will get a randomly card-drawn verse from the Tao Te Ching while we sum the reading up. Our primary hexagram, People in the Home, hexagram 37, has Li, Fire and Light below Xun, Wind or Wood. In this arrangement, you notice that there are people who belong in the walls of a home, and it differentiates those within from those without. And what's kind of interesting is then in our supporting hexagram, which puts our primary hexagram in a broader context and influence a direction of travel, an underlying issue that has to do with you and your relationship to it all. Hexagram 13, Sameness with People, expands that boundary, and it also classifies different groups. And it looks at what differentiates them all, but also what makes them all similar. And so it takes the boundary that we have, which is kind of for just the home that you live in, and expands it out and tries to deal with categories outside of that structured foundation. And I liked Kibi's card for this, and it even talked about the superior person or the sage kind of like helping out others, and it's got this hand reaching down. The Kuan Heaven trigram even, so that of the father or the dynamic principle, reaching down and helping. And what is this called? Fellowship. There's a bunch of eyes in the wall. And it looks like fire coming up, and interesting. So somebody coming to the aid of someone else almost. Someone with the power to aid is actually aiding. In sameness with people or fellowship, we keep the food in here, so that was the first mistake. Centers up. In a wider area, it talks about meeting out in the wilderness. And so it's like everybody coming out of their homes and mingling about. James Dekorne calls hexagram, or talked about hexagram 13 people in the home, or what he described it as union of forces, I think is what he said. Let's go back to that just to see. 13. Yeah, union of forces. One of the titles is minor synthesis. Beloved friends, like-minded persons, concording people, fellowship, community. But this has to do with sorting out different elements and trying our best to create some sort of synthesis. It's not the major synthesis or the Hieros Gamos or the Holy Marriage, and he related it to that being hexagram 11, tranquility. It's not that. It's a minor version of that, where we might be just starting to try and figure out how to unify a bunch of things that from the surface level seem not to unify very well. But this is, I would say, kind of like the initial stages, the minor synthesis of trying to do that. And he thinks about it in terms of the psyche and dealing with inner states in a way that places them in their proper positions. And if possible, there can be correlations. He said that only 2 of the lines, the changing lines, if you were to get changing lines in that hexagram, were auspicious. And all of the others showed kind of like a struggle to gain synthesis. So this is really, really at the beginning of trying to sort out how to organize. And we're moving, so we've got stuff in boxes all over the place. We need to get cabinets put together so we can organize things in this new place we've moved into. So that is similar kind of related concept. In the outer world, there is that. We've got all kinds of different communities, all kinds of different philosophies and different ways people live and outlooks of life, trying to jostle about to figure out how there can be some sort of dwelling on this planet together. And nobody necessarily knows the ultimate way that could be done. Maybe if this were to be related to the world at large, you might say that we're in the initial stages of finding out how to sort out disagreements, or come into the wild out of our homes and look at a wider context than what we're normally looking at. It's almost as though we rarely look at all of the different organized groups unless there's a problem. And in this situation we're finding ourselves in right now, our attention is being brought a wider angle, looking at things, if not just for the sake of trying to figure out who's doing what and trying to make ourselves safe. But in that space, it's helpful to sometimes have things brought to the surface so that we can see that we aren't just divided in these little homes, be it the homes we live in personally, be it the barrier of our skin that separates us from others, so our own self being like a home, and then looks at it from a wider angle and brings everybody out of their homes into this wild landscape. And in that space, what might have organized things internally within those walls of the home may not be the same things that will work in organizing things in a wider context. So I think that just it shows that we're in a state of jostling about and trying to figure out a synthesis. And the changing line was very auspicious. Let me read it from Hilary Barrett's perspective here. Changing line 4. The changing line puts a pin in the map to say you are here, or at least here are some places you may find yourself, takes precedence over all other elements, and is the most focused part of the reading. Wow. It has the general context, the capacity for action, asking, how the work can be done. And changing line 4 in Hexagram 37, Hilary Barrett says, enriching the home, great good fortune. Riches are stored up in the home. It is good to invest more there. What enriches the home? Harmony, sound friendship, and a wealth of exchange between people. There was a lot to do in one of these hexagrams with being truthful, like having things be based on truth, and that being something that would be a good foundation and helpful. There, again, I'm going to read changing line 4, maybe some of the stuff that James Dekorne brings out of the woodwork. Changing line 4. We literally just read it, but some people might be skipping around. He says, he breaks it down into 2 possible succinct definitions, A and B. A, our emotions must serve us, not rule us. And B, the whole is enriched by the rectitude of one of its parts. And it had to do a little bit with, if you're talking about in your psyche, he says, psychologically speaking, it reaffirms the idea that emotional energy under control and in its proper place is a great source of personal power. This is an image of the ideal role of the ego in relation to the work. It talks about, notes and paraphrases Sue, the woman of the family balances the income and expenditures, enriching the well-being and peace of the family. The faithful steward performs the same service for public welfare. So what skills allowed us to balance things within the home, we can use those same skills in a broader way, but they may not be used in the exact same way. Keeping in mind that when you enter into a larger group, there are more things potentially that could have differences within each of the different classifications and categories that we might not have ever dealt with before when we had less factors to work with, less people within the homes that we dwelled in. So it's complicated, but the reaching out of this Kweon Heaven hand to those below in the fire, this feels super potent to me. It's in Hexagram 13, which is our supporting hexagram, but still super helpful. And then, so we got 13 and 37. And to compare the images, might be fruitful. And so it's almost like we've got kind of like a cauldron set up down here, right? And there's fire and wood, wind or wood up above. It even has the changing lines. It's got broken, solid, solid, which is the same as what the hexagram's showing in that trigram. And then, I don't know, solid, broken, solid, I guess. So there's fire below wind or wood. And here, there's a fire situation going on as well. Within these walls, with all these eyes looking stuck in the wall, and this Qian heaven trigram is reaching down to the Li fire and light to support it. So we don't need to necessarily cook in our own juices. And hopefully we don't. Hopefully we achieve a major synthesis, not just a minor synthesis. And that human life continues in a profitable way for all would be the goal, both externally and in a psyche type way within each of us. Our verses that we'll be reading from the Tao Te Ching are 51, 66, 23, and 60. Suppose in that order. So my copy of the Tao Te Ching, at least this one, is by Jia Fu Feng and Jane English. Verse 51, wow, turned right to it. All things arise from Tao. They are nourished by virtue. They are formed from matter. They are shaped by environment. Thus the 10,000 things all respect Tao and honor virtue. Respect of Tao and honor of virtue are not demanded, but they are in the nature of things. Therefore all things arise from Tao. By virtue they are nourished, developed, cared for, sheltered, comforted, grown, and protected. Creating without claiming, doing without taking credit, guiding without interfering. This is primal virtue. '66. Why is the sea king of 100 streams? Because it lies below them. Therefore it is the king of 100 streams. If the sage would guide the people, he must serve with humility. If he would lead them, he must follow behind. In this way, when the sage rules, the people will not feel oppressed. When he stands before them, they will not be harmed. The whole world will support him and will not tire of him. Because he does not compete, he does not meet competition. Hmm. '23. To talk little is natural. High winds do not last all morning. Heavy rain does not last all day. Why is this? Heaven and earth. If heaven and earth cannot make things eternal, how is it possible for man? He who follows the Tao is at one with the Tao. He who is virtuous experiences virtue. He who loses the way feels lost. When you are at one with the Tao welcomes you. When you are at one with virtue, the virtue is always there. When you are at one with loss, the loss is experienced willingly. He who does not trust enough will not be trusted. In our primary hexagram, it talked about the members of the family being different aspects of virtue, which is interesting too. 60. Ruling the country is like cooking a small fish. Approach the universe with Tao, and evil will have no power. Not that evil is not powerful, but its power will not be used to harm others. Not only will it do no harm to others, but the sage himself will also be protected. They do not hurt each other, and the virtue in each one refreshes both. Mwah.